Hello, dear listener. Welcome to calm Cloud Chronicles, where imagination drifts and stories unfold. Sit back, relax, and let the journey begin. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soothing tales. Víðópnir, Guardian of the Realms. The icy winds of Niflheim carried a foreboding silence, as if the land itself held its breath. Deep beneath the frozen expanse, in a cavern shrouded in frost and time, lay Víðópnir, the eternal sentinel of the Nine Realms' balance. His presence was not one of conquest or destruction but of quiet vigilance, a living boundary between chaos and order. For centuries, the realms had thrived in fragile harmony, unaware of the silent protector that watched over them from the shadows. But this delicate balance was not meant to last. A growing disturbance in Yggdrasil's roots, an unnatural surge of power emanating from Midgard, threatened to unmake the cosmos. Far away, a seer named Kael, plagued by visions of spreading fractures and consuming voids, knew what had to be done. He alone understood the importance of calling upon the ancient dragon. Víðópnir, however, had not been summoned for an age, and it was said that his awakening was both a blessing and a curse. Kael, with the weight of destiny on his shoulders, set out on a perilous journey to Niflheim, unaware of the trials that awaited him, not only from the frozen land but from the secrets Víðópnir himself guarded. The cavern rumbled as a tremor rolled through the frozen ground of Niflheim. From the depths of the icy abyss, a glow began to pulse, a light not of fire, but of ancient power, stirring after centuries of silence. Frost-covered walls reflected the rhythm, as though the very bones of the earth were coming to life. Kael stood at the edge of the frozen chamber, the rune staff trembling in his grip. His breath formed clouds in the frigid air, each exhale heavier than the last. "This is it," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper against the rising hum. The faint melody of Víðópnir's song, carried through his visions, now resonated all around him, growing louder with every passing moment. The ice encasing the great dragon began to crack, faint lines spider webbing outward. A deafening crack split the air, and shards of frost fell like glass, revealing a gleaming scale beneath, a single piece of armor glinting with the light of Yggdrasil. Kael stumbled back as the cracks spread further, the frozen cocoon fracturing in a spectacular cascade. With a final, thunderous crash, the glacier exploded outward, releasing a blinding wave of light and frost. From the center of the storm, the dragon stirred. Víðópnir's wings slowly unfurled, shedding the last remnants of the ice that bound him. His towering form shimmered like a constellation brought to life, his scales reflecting the icy cavern in brilliant, ethereal hues. As he rose, the sound of his first breath reverberated through the cavern, carrying the weight of millennia. His eyes opened, two piercing orbs of icy blue, glowing with the wisdom of ages. They settled on Kael, unblinking and powerful. "Who summons me?" Víðópnir's voice echoed, a deep resonance that seemed to shake the world itself. It was not a voice meant for words, it was a force, a storm contained within sound. Kael stepped forward, though his legs trembled beneath him. "The Nine Realms are in peril," he began, his voice shaking but resolute. The balance of Yggdrasil has been fractured, and I have come to seek your guidance. The dragon's gaze lingered on him for a moment that felt like eternity. You awaken me, Víðópnir said, to speak of imbalance, yet you do not comprehend the forces you invoke. He arched his neck, towering higher. The harmony of the realms comes at a price. Do you understand the burden you seek to place upon me? Kael tightened his grip on the rune staff. I may not understand fully, but I know that without your aid, the roots of Yggdrasil will rot, and the 9 realms will collapse. For the first time, a flicker of something, recognition, perhaps, passed through the dragon's eyes. He unfurled his wings further, sending a gust of frigid wind rushing past Kael. If the balance is truly at stake, Víðópnir said, his voice now quieter, laden with solemnity, then you have done well to awaken me. But know this, mortal, the mending of Yggdrasil's roots will require more than strength or resolve. It will require sacrifice. As Víðópnir's wings folded back, the cavern grew eerily silent. The dragon fixed his piercing gaze on Kael, studying the seer as if weighing his worth. To mend the roots of Yggdrasil, the dragon said, his voice heavy with gravitas, you must first unravel the threads of the fracture. And that will require more than your resolve, mortal, it will require unity among those divided. Kael's heart sank. He had hoped the dragon would possess the power to fix the fracture outright, but now it was clear the path ahead would demand far more. What must I do? He asked, his voice steady despite his doubts. Víðópnir raised his head, towering over Kael. The imbalance feeds on discord, a reflection of the realm's fractured ties. The gods have grown arrogant, the mortals reckless, and the forces that once bound the 9 realms have been neglected. If the roots are to heal, each realm must offer its essence to Yggdrasil in harmony. Without their cooperation, the balance cannot be restored. Kael swallowed hard. But the realms are at odds, he said. Midgard and Asgard distrust each other. The Jotnar seek vengeance against the gods. Alfheim shuns involvement altogether. How can I unite them? Víðópnir's gaze softened, though his tone remained stern. The question is not how, but if you are willing to try. The dragon's wings unfurled once more, casting shimmering shadows across the cavern walls. Then let us begin. A gathering storm. As Kael emerged from Víðópnir's lair, the frigid winds of Niflheim seemed to intensify, as if the land itself sensed the enormity of the task ahead. The dragon followed, his movements graceful despite his immense size. Together, they began their journey to Midgard, where the fracture was strongest. Kael's first challenge was to rally allies who could help him in his quest. He knew he couldn't convince the realms alone. His visions had shown him glimpses of those who might assist him, individuals from different realms who shared his desire to preserve the balance. But they were scattered, and not all would trust him or each other. Their path led him to a ruined outpost on the edge of Niflheim, where Kael spotted a familiar figure. Halldór, the Asgardian warrior who had once fought beside him in battle. Halldór's armor was battered, and his expression hardened by years of distrust. What brings you here, Seer? Halldór growled, eyeing Víðópnir warily. And why have you brought the dragon? Kael explained the fracture's threat and the need for unity. At first, Halldór scoffed, unwilling to believe that cooperation could achieve what the gods might could not. But Víðópnir's commanding presence, and a glimpse of the glowing fracture beneath Yggdrasil, convinced him to join the cause. From there, the trio ventured to Alfheim, where they sought the aid of Solveig, an elven scholar with a deep understanding of Yggdrasil's roots. Solveig had long rejected the idea of involving her realm in the affairs of mortals, but the dragon's revelations opened her eyes to the greater danger. An unlikely alliance. As Kael, Víðópnir, Halldór, and Solveig formed an uneasy alliance, tensions grew. Halldór distrusted the elf's methods, while Solveig resented the Asgardians' arrogance. Kael struggled to hold the group together, knowing that their success depended on their ability to work as one. Víðópnir watched silently as the mortal and immortal allies argued among themselves. Finally, he spoke, his voice cutting through the icy air like a blade. "The fracture will thrive on your discord," he warned. "If you cannot see beyond your grievances, the realms will fall." His words struck a chord, forcing the group to confront their differences. Slowly, they began to understand each other's perspectives, forging a bond that would be tested as their journey continued. The cold winds of Niflheim gave way to the shifting skies of the Bifrost as Kael and his companions journeyed toward the base of Yggdrasil, where the fracture festered. Each step brought new challenges, testing not only their strength but their resolve to work together as one. The nature of the fracture. As they approached the roots of Yggdrasil, Víðópnir revealed the true origin of the fracture. The world tree's roots fed on the essence of each realm, maintaining balance by intertwining their unique energies. But Midgard's surge of unchecked magic, born of mortal greed and unrestrained experiments, had disrupted the equilibrium. Its influence twisted the roots, causing instability to spread through Yggdrasil's core. "This is not merely a crack," Víðópnir explained as they gazed upon the glowing fissure that pulsed beneath the earth. "It is a reflection of the realm's disunity. If the fracture consumes Yggdrasil's roots, the 9 realms will collapse, each dragged into the void of Ginnungagap." The companions stood in somber silence, their breaths clouding in the frigid air. Solveig studied the fracture closely, her fingers tracing the glowing veins etched into the ground. "The magic isn't just leaking, it's merging into something unnatural," she murmured. "If this continues, it won't just destroy the realms. It will create something entirely new, something chaotic." Kael felt the weight of Víðópnir's gaze upon him. "This is why the realms must unite," the dragon said. "Their shared essence is the only force capable of mending the fracture." The trials ahead. The fracture, however, was guarded, not by a conscious entity, but by the manifestations of imbalance itself. As they ventured closer to its epicenter, the companions found themselves confronted by living echoes of the realm's discord. Each trial forced them to confront their fears and flaws. Their first trial came in the form of shadowy apparitions, spectral versions of themselves that voiced their doubts and regrets. Halldór's echo sneered at him, accusing him of being a failure who had brought shame to Asgard. Solveig's shade whispered of the futility of her intellect, claiming that knowledge was powerless against forces of such magnitude. Kael's spectre taunted him with visions of isolation, reminding him that his gift as a seer had made him an outcast. The group fought back, their blades and magic clashing against the echoes, but the battle was not won through force alone. Each member had to confront the truth of their insecurities and learn to accept their imperfections. Only by embracing their shared vulnerability could they dispel the shadows. The second trial was one of trust. The companions faced a labyrinth of shifting paths, where each step required one member to guide the others blindfolded. Halldor, whose brute strength often made him dismissive of others, was forced to rely entirely on Solveig's quiet intellect. Solveig, in turn, had to trust Kael's instincts as a seer, despite her skepticism of his visions. Through these trials, they began to see each other not as adversaries, but as allies. Deepening relationships. As the trials wore on, the tensions within the group began to soften. Around the campfire one frigid night, Halldor finally opened up about the burden of his past. "I failed my kin when they needed me most," he admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. "That's why I sought exile. I thought, perhaps in helping you, I could find redemption." Solveig regarded him thoughtfully, her usual sharpness softened. "Redemption isn't something you find," she said. "It's something you create. And from what I've seen, you've already begun." Kael listened quietly, feeling a sense of camaraderie grow among them. Even Víðópnir, who often watched in silent judgment, seemed to approve of their growing bond. Yet Kael's visions remained a constant burden. He kept silent about the fleeting images that haunted him, the fracture growing wider, the realms succumbing to chaos, and a shadow looming over them all. He feared what the visions might mean and whether they foretold a betrayal yet to come. The road ahead. Their trials had forged them into a true fellowship, but they all knew the greatest challenge still lay ahead. To heal Yggdrasil, they would need to rally the realms and convince the gods, mortals, and all who dwelled between to set aside their grievances and work together. And somewhere, Kael knew, the fracture itself was watching, an unnatural force feeding on their every misstep. As they continued their journey, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more, and the faint echoes of laughter, low and menacing, carried on the wind. Kael's grip tightened on the rune staff. He knew their path would only grow darker from here. The road to unity was never going to be an easy one. Kael, with Víðópnir at his side, now faced the most daunting trial yet, persuading the fractured realms to set aside centuries of mistrust, grievances, and pride in order to save their shared existence. Yggdrasil's fracture thrived on discord, and the realms were rife with it. The Council of Realms. Kael's first move was to convene a council at the base of Yggdrasil. This had not been attempted in centuries. The last such gathering had been during the Asavanna War, and even then, the realms had barely reached a fragile truce. Convincing their leaders to gather was no small feat. Messages were sent to every corner of the 9 realms, bearing the seal of Víðópnir himself. Many doubted the authenticity of the summons, others outright refused. Despite the odds, representatives began to arrive, though their arrival was anything but harmonious. From Asgard came Thor, wielding Mjolnir and full of his usual bravado. The Vanir sent Freya, who viewed Asgard's intentions with suspicion. The dwarves of Svartalfheim, represented by King Dwalin, arrived late, bickering among themselves. Alfheim's envoy brought no warriors, only scholars, who regarded the proceedings with detached curiosity. The frost giants of Jotunheim came reluctantly, led by a formidable but wary chieftain named Skadi. Even Hel, the ruler of the underworld, sent an emissary, a spectral figure whose presence sent chills through the others. Kael, though overwhelmed by the sheer force of egos and histories clashing in the gathering, stood at the center, flanked by Haldor, Solveig, and Víðópnir. The dragon loomed behind him, silent but commanding. Discord unleashed. The first attempts to discuss the fracture dissolved into chaos. Old wounds flared as Asgard accused Jotunheim of treachery, the dwarves denounced the gods for exploiting their craftsmanship without gratitude, and the elves questioned why they should involve themselves at all. The emissary of Hel spoke only in cryptic warnings, stoking the fires of paranoia among the others. Thor slammed Mjolnir onto the ground, the thunder echoing through the council. "Why should Asgard bend its knee to the likes of you?" he bellowed, pointing to Skadi. "You expect us to trust those who seek our destruction?" Skadi's icy glare could have frozen rivers. "And why should Jotunheim believe that Asgard has anything but its own interests at heart?" she retorted. "Perhaps this fracture is your doing." The arguments continued, each realm voicing its grievances, each leader unwilling to yield. The arguments continued, each realm voicing its grievances, each leader unwilling to yield. Kael felt his hope slipping away. If this was the unity Víðópnir spoke of, the realms were doomed. The dragon speaks. As the shouting reached its peak, Víðópnir finally spoke. His voice cut through the noise like a gale, commanding silence. "Enough," he said, his tone deep and resonant, reverberating through Yggdrasil's roots. "You bicker like children while the realms you claim to protect are consumed by the fracture. Have you forgotten what is at stake?" The leaders fell silent, their gazes turning to the great dragon. "You speak of trust," Víðópnir continued, "yet you have done nothing to earn it. Each of you clings to your pride, your grudges, as if they will shield you from the coming collapse. They will not." Kael stepped forward, emboldened by the dragon's words. "The fracture feeds on our disunity," he said, his voice steady. "If we cannot stand together, we will fall apart. The 9 realms will fall into Ginnungagap, and all you have fought to protect will be lost." A fragile alliance. Thor was the first to step forward. "I will fight to save the realms," he said gruffly, "but I will not trust Jotunheim until they prove their loyalty." Skadi, her expression unreadable, nodded slowly. "If Asgard takes the first step toward reconciliation, Jotunheim will follow." Kael seized the moment. "Then let us begin here," he said. "Each of you must offer something to heal the fracture, a piece of your realm's essence. It is the only way to restore the balance." Freya spoke next, her voice calm but firm. If we are to offer such a gift, we must ensure that all realms contribute equally. There can be no favoritism. One by one, the leaders agreed, though their trust in one another was tenuous at best. The council's success hinged on whether this fragile alliance could endure the trials to come. The seeds of unity had been sown, but Kael knew the path ahead was fraught with danger. The leaders of the realms carried centuries of mistrust, and the fracture would test their resolve at every turn. Would their newfound alliance hold, or would it crumble under the weight of their divisions? With the fragile alliance of the realms secured, Kael and his companions embarked on their next task, gathering the essence of each realm, a unique gift that reflected its essence and would help mend the fracture in Yggdrasil's roots. Each trial they faced would not only test their strength and unity but also reveal the depths of the realms' differences, and their shared destiny. Their first destination was Muspelheim, the realm of fire and chaos, where rivers of molten rock scorched the air and jagged spires erupted from the earth. The fiery essence of Muspelheim, forged in the heart of Surtur's eternal flame, would be the first offering. The group was met by Surtur's emissary, a towering fire giant clad in armor that glowed like embers. He regarded the group with disdain. "The essence of Muspelheim is not given lightly," he said, his voice like crackling flames. "It must be earned." Their trial was to cross the Veil of Flame, a volcanic chasm that spewed firestorms at unpredictable intervals. As they ventured into the blistering heat, their differences threatened to tear them apart. Haldor's impatience clashed with Solveig's cautious planning, while Kael struggled to keep them focused on the task. When they reached the heart of the Veil, the fire giant appeared once more. He demanded they prove their unity by extinguishing a series of fire geysers using only their combined skills. Solveig crafted a strategy to redirect molten streams using shards of cooled lava, while Haldor used his strength to create barriers. Kael used his visions to time their efforts precisely. Together, they succeeded, earning Muspelheim's fiery essence, an orb of pure flame. The group's next trial led him to Alfheim, the realm of light and beauty. The elves were wary of outsiders, especially those associated with realms of war and destruction. Their essence lay hidden in the sacred pool of Lumina, but its waters could only be drawn by one whose heart was free of deceit. Kael, Solveig, and Haldor each attempted the task, but the pool rejected them, showing visions of their hidden fears and regrets. It was only through introspection and honesty that they were able to face their inner turmoil. Kael confessed his guilt over leading others into danger, Haldor admitted his pride had blinded him in the past, and Solveig revealed her fear of failure. Their acceptance of these flaws brought the pool to life, and its waters swirled into a glowing crystal, becoming Alfheim's essence. To claim the essence of Helheim, the realm of the dead, the group ventured into the realm's cold, oppressive mists. Hel's emissary demanded they confront the spirits of their past, a trial that forced him to face their most painful memories. Kael was haunted by the vision of his family, who had perished while he was away, leaving him with the burden of his gift as a seer. Haldor faced the specters of comrades he had failed to save in battle, their accusations cutting him to the core. Solveig was confronted by the shadow of her mentor, who told her she had squandered her knowledge. It was Víðópnir who reminded him of their purpose, his voice piercing the mists. The past is a burden, not a chain. Let it teach you, but do not let it bind you. With his guidance, they overcame the trial, and Hel granted them her essence, a shard of black ice that seemed to trap light itself. The seeds of division. Though they emerged victorious from each realm, the fractures within their group began to grow. Haldor's mistrust of Solveig resurfaced, while Kael felt the weight of his visions pulling him further into isolation. Even Víðópnir seemed distant, as though his own thoughts were clouded by the enormity of their task. As they continued their journey, the fractures in the group mirrored those in Yggdrasil itself. Kael couldn't shake the feeling that their unity was as fragile as the realms they sought to save. Despite the strain of their trials, the group's bond held firm. Each challenge had forged their unity, and though their differences remained, they were no longer adversaries but comrades in a shared quest. At the heart of their growing strength was Víðópnir, whose presence had become the anchor they relied upon, a force of wisdom and power that guided them through their darkest moments. A gathering storm. As they journeyed toward Jotunheim for their next trial, Víðópnir began to share more of his knowledge, his deep voice filling the icy winds that accompanied them. "The strength you have found in each other is admirable," he said, his glowing eyes watching him as they walked. "But you must understand, unity alone will not be enough. The fracture is a reflection not just of the realm's discord but of the frailty of the bonds that tie existence together." Kael, ever inquisitive, tilted his head. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" he asked. "The realms teetering on the edge of collapse." Víðópnir nodded slowly, his wings casting long shadows on the snow. "Long ago, before the realms were as you know them, there was another fracture, a rift that nearly sundered creation. The gods sought to mend it with war and fire, but it was not their might that restored the balance. It was the willingness of mortals to embrace sacrifice and to unite despite their differences." Haldor grunted. "Mortals? The gods always take credit for saving the realms." The dragon's gaze was sharp, though not unkind. "The gods play their part, as do mortals. But it is the balance between power and humility, that sustains the world. Remember this as you face what lies ahead." The trial of Jotunheim. When they arrived in Jotunheim, the frost giants greeted them with suspicion. Skadi, the chieftain who had attended the council, informed them that the essence of Jotunheim could only be taken by one who proved their resilience against the trials of the wilds. Unlike the previous realms, this trial would test their survival as a group rather than their individual strengths. The frost giants released them into a frozen tundra, where blizzards raged and the ground itself seemed to shift underfoot. They had no weapons or tools, only their wits and the guidance of Víðópnir, who circled above them, his wings creating brief pockets of calm in the storm. When the blizzards intensified, threatening to separate them, it was Víðópnir who landed beside them, his immense form shielding them from the icy winds. "Stay together," he urged. "The storm seeks to divide you, as the fracture does. Only your unity will see you through." At one point, Solveig nearly fell into a crevasse hidden beneath the snow. It was Víðópnir's roar that alerted the group, and Kael's quick thinking that pulled her back to safety. Despite their struggles, the trial brought them closer, forcing them to rely not only on their own strengths but on their trust in each other, and in the dragon who had become their protector as much as their guide. A growing bond. That night, as they rested in the relative calm of a sheltered cave, Víðópnir spoke to them not as a being of ancient power, but as a companion who had come to value their company. "I have watched countless mortals rise and fall," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Yet few have shown the resolve you have. Perhaps you will succeed where others have failed." Halldór chuckled, his breath visible in the cold air. "High praise from a dragon." Solveig smiled faintly. "Coming from you, that almost sounds like a compliment." Kael, though quieter, felt a warmth growing in his chest. For all the weight of his visions and the uncertainty of their quest, he no longer felt alone. Víðópnir's presence was not just a guiding force, it was a symbol of the unity they had built, a unity that would hold, even in the face of the fracture's growing threat. Their journey next led the group to the realm of Svartalfheim, the underground world of the dwarves. Known for their unmatched craftsmanship and cunning, the dwarves were fiercely protective of their secrets. Gaining their essence would be no simple feat, for the dwarves' price would not be set by strength or survival, but by ingenuity and trust. The dwarves' challenge. Upon reaching the gates of Nidavellir, the sprawling capital of the dwarves, Kael and his companions were greeted by King Dwalin himself. The stout, silver-bearded king stood in his gem-encrusted armor, a glowing warhammer resting in his hand. "You come seeking the essence of Svartalfheim," Dwalin said, his voice gruff and commanding. "But I will not entrust the lifeblood of our realm to outsiders without proof of their worth." Dwalin explained the trial. The group would be locked within the Forge of Eternity, a massive mechanical labyrinth built deep beneath the city. To earn the essence, they would have to work as one to navigate its shifting pathways, solve intricate puzzles, and rekindle the ancient forge at its center, a forge that had not burned in centuries. "What's the catch?" Halldór asked, crossing his arms warily. Dwalin smirked. "The catch, Asgardian, is that the labyrinth is alive. It changes with every step. Fail to rekindle the forge before the hourglass runs empty, and the labyrinth will seal itself, permanently." The group exchanged uncertain glances, but Víðópnir stepped forward, his wings casting a shimmering glow across the cavern. "We accept," he said, his voice calm yet firm. The living labyrinth. The Forge of Eternity was unlike anything they had faced before. The labyrinth twisted and turned with every step, its walls shifting like clockwork gears. Pathways that seemed clear moments before would vanish, replaced by dead ends or traps. The air was thick with the heat of dormant forges, and the sound of grinding metal echoed through the maze. Solveig quickly took charge, deciphering runes carved into the walls to determine the labyrinth's patterns. "It's responding to us," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's testing our ability to think as one." The first puzzle required him to align a series of rotating gears to open a pathway. Víðópnir's immense strength proved invaluable here. He used his claws to hold the largest gear in place while Halldór and Kael turned the smaller ones. Their teamwork unlocked a hidden passage, but the labyrinth's shifting nature grew more complex with each victory. At one point, they became separated when a wall slammed down between them. Kael found himself alone with Víðópnir, the dragon's presence both a comfort and a reminder of their task. Do you believe we can succeed? Kael asked. Kael asked, his voice uncertain. Víðópnir's gaze was steady. Success is not guaranteed, he said. But the bonds you have forged will carry you further than you realize. Trust in him, as you must trust in yourself. Rekindling the forge. After countless twists, turns, and trials, they finally reached the heart of the labyrinth, the ancient forge itself. Massive bellows loomed overhead, their mechanisms rusted from disuse. The forge's hearth sat cold and silent, its surface etched with ancient runes. Dwalin's voice echoed through the chamber, carried by the labyrinth's magic. Rekindle the forge, and Svartalfheim's essence will be yours. Fail, and the labyrinth will hold you forever. The task required precision and coordination. Solveig deciphered the runes on the hearth, discovering that the forge could only be lit by combining three elements: fire, stone, and breath. Halldór used his strength to haul molten rock from a nearby pit, while Kael carefully timed the placement of glowing coals into the hearth. Finally, Víðópnir used his icy breath, not to extinguish, but to temper the molten materials, allowing them to bond. As the forge roared to life, its flames casting golden light across the chamber, the labyrinth began to tremble. From the heart of the flames, a crystalline hammer emerged, glowing with the essence of Svartalfheim. Kael reached out and took it, feeling the weight of the dwarf's contribution in his hands. Dwalin appeared, his expression both stern and approving. "You have proven yourselves worthy," he said. "The essence of Svartalfheim is yours. Use it wisely." A moment of reflection. As they left the labyrinth, the group felt a renewed sense of purpose. The trial had tested not only their skills but their ability to work as one, and they had emerged stronger for it. Víðópnir, who had watched over them throughout, seemed quieter, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. Kael approached him as they rested by a flowing underground river. "You've guided us through every step," he said. "But I can't help but wonder, what is the price you've paid to do so?" Quote. Víðópnir's eyes glimmered with a strange mix of sadness and resolve. "Every protector has their burden," he said. "Mine is to remain vigilant, even as the cost grows heavier. But this is not your concern, Kael. Your path lies ahead, not behind." The seer nodded, though his heart felt heavy. Whatever burden Víðópnir carried, Kael knew it was tied to the fracture, and to their ultimate destiny. The group stood at the base of Yggdrasil, its immense roots stretching into the cosmos like veins carrying the lifeblood of the 9 realms. They had gathered the essence of each realm, their combined efforts a testament to the unity they had forged. Yet as they approached the glowing fissure, its light pulsing like a dying star, they knew their greatest challenge lay ahead. Víðópnir stood at the forefront, his wings casting shimmering shadows over the fractured ground. The dragon's piercing eyes narrowed as he observed the fissure. "It has grown," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "The fracture feeds on discord. Even now, it hungers for the imbalance that persists within the realms." Kael gripped the rune staff, its glowing runes a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding them. "We've gathered the essences," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "What must we do now?" Víðópnir turned to face the group. "The essences must be offered to the roots," he explained. "Their combined power will weave the threads of balance once more. But the fracture will resist. It is not merely an absence, it is a force of chaos. And chaos does not yield without a fight." The unraveling. As Kael, Halldór, and Solveig began placing the essences into the runic grooves carved into the ground, the fissure erupted in a blinding flash of light. The air filled with an unnatural hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate through their very souls. From the fracture emerged a swirling vortex of shadow and light, an entity born of imbalance, its form constantly shifting and incomprehensible. The group braced themselves as the entity lashed out, tendrils of chaos whipping through the air. Halldór raised his shield, deflecting a strike meant for Solveig, while Kael used the rune staff to channel the essence's power. Víðópnir roared, his breath freezing the tendrils in place, giving the group precious moments to act. "The fracture is fighting back," Solveig shouted, her hands glowing as she wove protective spells around the group. "It's more than fighting, it's alive," Kael replied, his visions showing glimpses of the entity's origins. "It's trying to consume the essences, to use them against us." Against us. The dragon's sacrifice. Víðópnir landed beside them, his immense form towering over the swirling chaos. "You must complete the ritual," he said, his voice calm despite the storm around them. "I will hold the fracture at bay." Kael looked up at the dragon, his heart sinking. "You can't face it alone," he said. "You're already weakened from the trials." Víðópnir's gaze was steady, his ancient wisdom shining through. "My purpose has always been to protect the balance. If that purpose requires my strength, so be it." The dragon spread his wings, unleashing a blizzard of frost and light that engulfed the fracture. The chaos recoiled, its tendrils snapping and retreating, but Víðópnir knew it would not last. "Finish the ritual," he roared, his voice shaking the earth. Kael, Solveig, and Halldór worked frantically, placing the final essences into the grooves. The ground trembled as the threads of balance began to weave themselves, Yggdrasil's roots pulsing with renewed energy. But the fracture fought back, its tendrils striking Víðópnir with brutal force. The restoration. With the final essence in place, Kael raised the rune staff, its runes glowing brighter than ever. The staff's power surged through Yggdrasil's roots, sealing the fracture in a brilliant cascade of light. The vortex of chaos let out a deafening wail as it was drawn back into the void, its tendrils dissipating into nothingness. As the light faded, the group looked around. The fracture was gone, and Yggdrasil's roots glowed with renewed vitality. The 9 realms had been saved, but at a cost. Víðópnir lay on the ground, his once glimmering scales dulled and his wings folded. Kael rushed to his side, his heart heavy with sorrow. "You saved us," he said, his voice trembling. The dragon's eyes opened, faint but steady. "You saved yourselves," he replied. "The balance is restored. My vigil is complete." With a final breath, Víðópnir's form shimmered and faded, his essence merging with Yggdrasil's roots. The protector had become part of the balance he had fought so hard to preserve. A new beginning. Kael, Halldór, and Solveig stood together, their hearts heavy yet filled with resolve. They had not only mended the fracture but forged bonds that would endure. As the winds of Niflheim carried the echoes of Víðópnir's song, they vowed to honor his sacrifice by safeguarding the unity he had fought to achieve. The realms, though saved, remained fragile. But Kael knew one truth. The balance of existence was not maintained by gods or mortals alone. It was a shared responsibility, one that required courage, trust, and sacrifice. The Song of Balance. The silence that followed the fracture's sealing was deafening, as if the realms themselves were holding their breath. Kael stood motionless, the rune staff still glowing faintly in his grasp, the weight of Víðópnir's sacrifice sinking in. Around him, the roots of Yggdrasil pulsed with renewed vitality, their ancient veins weaving back together, healing what had nearly been destroyed. Solveig placed a hand on Kael's shoulder, her expression solemn but resolute. "He knew what it meant to be a protector," she said quietly. "And now his legacy is part of the balance he fought to preserve." Halldór, though usually blunt and skeptical, nodded in agreement. "He was more than a guardian," he muttered. "He gave everything, so we could have another chance." Kael raised his gaze to Yggdrasil's towering branches, his heart heavy with both grief and gratitude. The dragon's song lingered in the air, soft and haunting, a melody carried by the winds of Niflheim and beyond. It was not a song of sorrow, but of unity, a reminder of what had been achieved and what must be protected. The dawn of renewal. As the group turned to leave, Kael paused, his eyes lingering on the faint shimmer of light where Víðópnir's form had disappeared. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "For everything." The journey back to the realms was quiet, each step marked by reflection. Though they had succeeded in mending the fracture, they knew the work was far from over. The 9 realms remained fragile, and the unity forged in the face of chaos was a delicate bond that would require constant care. Kael, now burdened with the mantle of a seer and a protector, vowed to honor Víðópnir's legacy. The rune staff, no longer glowing, felt heavier in his grasp, a symbol of the price paid to restore the balance. The song lives on. In time, the realms began to heal, their leaders inspired by the sacrifice of the dragon and the courage of those who had fought to save them. Tales of Víðópnir's final flight spread across the 9 realms, his name becoming synonymous with unity and perseverance. And in the icy depths of Niflheim, where the winds carried whispers of forgotten legends, Víðópnir's song continued to echo, a song of balance, a song of hope, a song that would never fade. Thank you for being a part of Calm Cloud Chronicles. What kind of stories help you relax the most? Please let us know in comments below. If you enjoyed this story, let us know by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until next time, stay peaceful and keep dreaming.